Well, good evening. Welcome, everyone, to this evening's 7 for 7 YouTube live event. Kevin Spry, I'm the professional learning manager for Texas Instruments, the Education Technology Division. I'm really excited here to be with you this evening to discuss a bit about our 7 for 7, which is a session that we host at our annual International T³ conference. This is where an opportunity where we have 7 educators who get the chance to speak for 7 minutes each, hence the 7 for 7, on ideas and thoughts that they are passionate about in the field of education. I'm really excited tonight to introduce one of our 7 for 7 speakers, Jessica Kohout. And Jessica's a biology and AP biology teacher at Reservoir High School in Howard County, Maryland. She's also been a T³ national instructor since 2015. She regularly presents at regional and national conferences and has even presented overseas, internationally, in Europe. I think that was about a year and a half ago, on topics related to science and STEM and diversity and equity in education. She's an exam reader for AP biology exams, and we're really excited an opportunity to view Jessica's presentation, STEM for All, and then we're going to open it up for some questions, for your questions for Jessica tonight. So hi, Jessica. Good to see you.
Yeah, hi, Kevin.
Even though it's virtually, but it's been a while. So looking forward to getting a chance to discuss and talk with you tonight. And a reminder for people, you can submit your questions that we have. And after the replay of Jessica's 7 minutes presentation, we'll have a chance to have a question and answer session with her. So we'll go ahead to the video.
How many of you in here have a bottle just like this? Plastic water bottle? Anybody? A lot of us. They're easy, they're convenient, they're inexpensive, but they cause a lot of waste. And this waste, if you visualize how much, if everybody put their water bottle in a pile in the front of the room, would be a lot of water bottles, a lot of plastics. And those plastics don't always end up in the trash. They don't always end up being recycled. Sometimes they end up in the waterways. And I'm a biology teacher from the area, and to give you some background knowledge, Maryland is one of the 19 states that have adopted the next generation science standards. We have my county, Howard County Public School Systems, have fully implemented those standards this year in our science classes. And we've gone from a biology end of course exam to a Maryland Integrated Science Assessment that is given to students during their 3rd year. And so I've taken this opportunity in the change of science education to incorporate more STEM, to change what I'm doing in my classroom, or more of what my students are doing in the classroom. And so it's really important for me to think of problems like single-use plastics, and think of how I can incorporate that into my classroom so I can provide opportunities to do STEM for all of my students and make it really accessible. And as students are doing science and not just memorizing facts, they're learning. And most of us are probably very familiar with the underrepresentation of women and minorities in science and engineering fields. It's a problem, a huge problem. And so we have to think about how we can get more women and minorities involved in STEM. And how do we do that? I'm sure it's just an easy fix, right? Just a total overhaul of the system to allow access and equality, right? Sure. And so what can I do as a biology teacher? So as a biology teacher, I can meet my students where they are and show them the power of STEM. And as a biology teacher, I've been hearing about STEM for the past 15 years that I've been teaching. And I'm like, okay, I teach biology, that's the S. I got that. And science, biology is a study of life, and we do some cool stuff. So I got at least part of it. And math, the M part, we do a lot of math in science classes, and we work together. We use math to make sense of our data that we're collecting. It's very important. You can't do much in science without really relying on math. And technology, well, we're at a technology conference, so we are very familiar with technology and the importance it is to use it in the classroom. We just need to teach students how and when to use it appropriately. But the E in STEM, engineering, that was my personal stumbling block. I just didn't know what it would look like in a science classroom. I think that had to do with some of my misconceptions with engineering. And I realized engineering is really about problem solving. And problem solving is something that I could do in my classroom. And so I started looking for problems that my students could solve in the classroom. And I wanted to build a STEM classroom where they could be curious and use creative problem solving and be creative and to collaborate with one another. And those types of problems where they can do all that can happen with Mr. Trash Wheel. I'm obsessed, I'm sorry. But if you haven't seen Mr. Trash Wheel, he's right outside. Mr. Trash Wheel also has some friends. There's a Captain Trash Wheel in Canton. Professor Trash Wheel's in Canton, Captain Trash Wheel's in Masonville Cove. But it's such an innovative design that is meant to take trash that flows off the watershed into its belly, and it takes so much of these plastic water bottles out of the waterways and into a dumpster. And I thought that would be such an inspiration for a problem of single-use plastics and the human impact on our ecosystems. So as our students, we went around our campus and collected trash. We found a lot of these. We found a lot of other weird stuff, but I won't get into that. We also started designing our own little mini trash wheels. So we did some brainstorming and concept sketching, and then they spent some time working through the engineering design process of building and testing, and then ultimately showing off their creative, very creative designs. And I tried to make it as real life as possible, and each group had a project manager who met with their team every morning to talk about their goals for the day. They even had to do performance evaluations. And then we had a software engineer who wrote the code to control the motors and sensors. We had a mechanical engineer that chose the single-use plastics that they collected because they built it out of the plastics they collected to bring awareness of it. And then we also had a marketing and design person to bring awareness to the single-use plastics, to make it cute so people want to talk to it, and a 60-second PSA. And so I try to bring in all types of kids to bring that interest, to get that hook, so that students were interested and wanted to learn more. And they were. I couldn't get kids out of my room. They wanted to come in during lunch and after school. They wanted to solve that problem. They're like, we're so close. We need to finish this. And it was amazing to see how into this project they ended up being. And as a teacher, I would just go around and listen to the class and just hear them talk to each other. And instead of giving up, they would say things like, oh, well, that didn't work. Let's try this. Or have you tried that? What if we do this? And most of the time when you're doing stuff in class, they would just be like, oh, I don't get it. I'm just going to like sit on my phone and text. And none of that happened. It was amazing. And going and experience that with my students by taking that risk and trying something very different and new, I was able to really see that power of STEM myself, and I want to do more. So my takeaway is this. If you can incorporate STEM concepts in content area classes, any content area, even theater, you can show those students that may be a little hesitant about coding or engineering design, and show them that maybe coding is pretty cool and engineering is kind of fun. And maybe they'll be interested in trying it out one day. So if you can expose your students to STEM and give them problems they're interested in, then you can help them change the world. Thank you.
Wow. That's great. Wow, thank you. I'm just going to make sure we stop the sharing. Wow, that was good. Good to see it again. I have to tell people I was so honored I had the opportunity at the conference that Jessica presented that on initially, was in Baltimore, and Mr. Trash Wheel was outside our conference. So it was so exciting to have a picture of Mr. Trash Wheel with that. So that was cool. I don't think he's gotten into autographs yet, but that'll be maybe that's the next stage with that.
That would be great. I would be the first in line.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll watch to see what questions are coming in. from folks online. But I had one that I just wanted a chance to ask you, because after watching it again, it sort of tweaked me a little bit thinking about this idea. So you teach biology. I've had a chance to see you present at various conferences and so on. I think you'd be the type of teacher I would have loved to have it when I was in science and in high school with that. But what got you into trash?
Maybe it was Oscar the Grouch from when I was a kid. Well, it's more of I think trash is just an it's unacceptable pollutant that we can visibly see. It's one of the things that if you look out in an open area, that's the first thing that you notice. Like there's the trees and the grass and the flowers and the water, and then there's trash. And so it was something visible that people notice, and something that my students could notice even on their own schoolyards and communities, and wanting, getting them to think about, well, how did this trash get there and what can we do about it? And so it came kind of about like just finding entry points into getting kids more concerned about environmental issues, and caring about their own schoolyards and communities.
That's great. Yeah, I'm kind of remember, this might date me as well. I don't know if you heard, but I remember when growing up, at the time there was sort of that started to get that shift towards being concerned about the environment, and there was the phrase that was out on public service announcements: "Give a hoot, don't pollute." Do you remember that?
Yes,
Good.
I'm old enough to realize that.
Okay.
Maybe not my students.
Okay. So I just remember that as well. And that was always, I think you're right, starting to get people. And I know that in many jurisdictions now, there's starting to be legislation in place, and the recognition of the challenge of single-use plastics and what it's meaning with regards to the environment. So I think that's great. If you had 7 minutes to share that, and it goes by very quickly. I don't know if people realize in terms of they think you're going to have to speak. That's a long time, but I think you probably attest it isn't. If you had more time, is there anything you'd like to add to the topic that you didn't get a chance?
Yeah, I mean, that 7 minutes was really hard, and I practiced a lot to kind of get everything I needed to say in that 7 minutes. I shouted out our theater department in the end. I don't know if you caught it, as far as STEM and content areas, even theater, because they were nice enough to let me practice, or not audition, but to do a dry run in front of them and give me some critiques. And it was very helpful to try to narrow everything I needed down into that 7 minutes, which was a challenge. But I could talk forever about this concept. I had never really thought about doing anything like this in my biology classroom up until a few years ago. And I went through a professional development with at the time it was the new Innovator Hub, which is the microcontroller that I used with this project, thinking like, it's this fun little thing, coding, what can I do with that in my class? I'm a biology teacher. And I saw the connection between my own personal interest and engineering design and coding, and like a light bulb went off. So if I am really excited about learning how to code and using this to solve engineering problems, then I can help my students get excited about it. And, growing up, I just never thought like engineering was my thing. Like I never thought that I wanted to code. Even though like the people around me were doing it, I was just like, it seems boring. But what I was lacking is seeing the connection to what was my passion. And so seeing a project where we designed a sustainable garden, where we looked at different constraints of, water level, moisture level, humidity, temperature, light level, and then determining how much water can be pumped out in order to save water, so you're not wasting it. I was like, oh, I could do this with my students. And this would fit so nicely with a lot of our NGSS standards of, building an engineering design, solving real world problems. And in the class that I did this with, we do both earth science and biology standards. So both earth science and biology have human impact standards. And so that was checking off all these boxes of even, designing solutions and coming up with explanations, as well as looking at how the cause and effect of the pollution on our ecosystems. It was just fit, like it made perfect sense to do a project like this in biology. And it wasn't really difficult to put in coding. Like the kids picked it up really quickly, even the ones that had never done it before. The kids that had never done it before and that tried it and would persevere through it and would say things at the end of the class like, I'm so proud of myself. Like that, like you just leave class like, oh my God, I did something really cool as a teacher. And like that just kept me going. Like that's why I wanted to continue to try to find ways to fuse in engineering design and expose kids to coding, because it's such a valuable skill these days that if they see something that, or get exposed to a skill that they may not have thought they would be good at, which they turned out, hey, it's not so bad, then I think that's a valuable thing, that they can leave my class saying, hey, I did this, I can do this, and I want to do more.
That's wonderful. I mean, what a lovely thought. I think for a lot of teachers out there, as you say, trying to make that connection. I took coding. I took computer science in university, and I mean, I remember starting with the idea of doing the simple beginning part was printing "Hello World," and yeah, you wonder, but I could see from a 15-year-old, it's like big deal. What's the and I think sorry, go ahead. I think you said the connection. Yeah.
Yeah, and I start with my students with that too. So when I introduce them to coding, we start with Hello World, and that's what I model for them. And I use the TI Inspire Navigator system in my classroom so I can project what they write up on my screen. And so instead of Hello World, I tell them they could put a school appropriate phrase within that code to project up onto the LCD projector. But I always preview them first.
Oh, that's good.
Deal with 14 and 15-year-olds.
Yes. But that's great to have that. I mean, but to think, and as they say, they start to see where coding, you're right. I mean, coding has such an important role to play in so many ways in society, but you're right. You may not see that connection when you just start. And I think that's wonderful that you've turned them on to say to solving problems. Like you're right. A coding is required. Programming is necessary for things as simple as programming a water sprinkler, conserving water. As you say, with the idea of how you get something to pick up trash off the top of a water, like the trash wheel. I think those are wonderful examples. I know you mentioned the theater. I think you also said something in your presentation, and I think I caught up in terms I thought was really interesting, because it's almost like STEAM is another thing we talk about with STEM, but you had them do a public service announcement. Could you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted them to not just build something, but also to bring awareness of the problem. So the standard was the human impact in solving a real world problem. And so here we're identifying the issue of single-use plastic in waterways and trying to educate the public. So the PSA was part of it. But it was also to bring in some of those other students that might be a little hesitant to like see a project where, oh gosh, I'm like the artsy kid. I don't want to code. I don't want to do this engineering stuff. I rather like my artistic outlet is, either animation or videography. And I felt like having a leadership role, some coding roles, like a design role, and then this marketing role, I could fit a lot of my student personalities into these roles where they could really learn how to work together in groups, to learn how to communicate. And even if they're doing very different tasks, they still need to work together. So the PSA person, the marketing and design person needs to communicate with the engineers, and the project lead needs to make sure that they're all communicating too, because one affects the other. And I felt like this would be like a real world type, little business model in my own classroom. And it was awesome. It worked out really well.
Wow.
They communicated well. They just like the chatter. I wish I recorded just the chatter, because being a virtual teacher right now, I miss that immensely.
Yeah.
It's very quiet talking to my laptop every day.
Oh, wow. But I think that's wonderful. I mean, I like the fact you brought up this aspect that STEM, STEAM, it really is a combination of things. And you're right. People are needing to see that. Students need to see when they're going out into the world and they're looking at careers. And so there's a need to work together. There will be people, you're right, that'll be expert coders, but you still will need to be people that have the knowledge of marketing and can communicate with those people and work with them. Mathematicians, scientists, engineers, design, all those have to work together, and people need to have sort of an understanding of the various components. I think it's wonderful. What a great project for people to tie that together. When you take a look at that, how, as a biology teacher, how did you connect that to this project, connected to your curriculum? Because I hear that from a lot of teachers. I'm sure you do too. I've got to get the curriculum done. How does that connect for you?
Yeah, at the time, I felt a little less pressure because our state changed the way that testing was being done. So usually biology was the state test of the year, or the year that kids were sitting for a state test, and the content. But they had changed that to an integrated science assessment, but now they've changed it back to biology. So biology is now the state test, although I don't know what state tests will look like this year since we're virtual. So I'm still waiting to hear state decisions. But after doing this project, like I can't stop. Like I have to fit it in. Like I felt like it was so valuable. The students got so much out of it, and they still learn. Standards. So I did this in our ecology unit. So we're talking about interactions and human impact, and so they could see that the trash that we put on our watershed, in our schoolyard. So we're learning about watersheds. We were learning about schoolyards. We participated in. We have a partnership in our district with the Howard County Conservancy that does a watershed report card. So we went out and collected data on our schoolyard, and we did trash pickups and monitored how much trash we would find on our schoolyard. And that was like just going out on our schoolyard and picking up trash was some of the more enjoyable things that students said that they did. Well, they got to be outside because all kids love to be outside. It's amazing sometimes, like high schoolers, I don't think get outside as much as they should. And I would just remember this one time we took a bunch of kids out to our side of our school where we have some water retention ponds, and we were doing some water quality data on the water retention ponds, and like kids were just like frolicking up and down the hill, like playing like preschoolers. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like, we need to do this more.
Yeah,
Be outside and play. But and so just getting students outside and experiencing nature and seeing and really visualizing their connection to the schoolyard, seeing that their actions have effects, that it's greater beyond themselves, which is sometimes hard for teenagers to understand, that your actions are greater, have effects beyond yourself. I think that's also a very good lesson as well, that you have a responsibility, or we all have a responsibility, to make sure that we're making good choices for our environment. And here are some tools that you can use to make those choices. And here are some tools you can use to be the problem solvers, to find the solutions. And these students are the ones that really give me hope, with their creativity, with their ideas. So going forward, I'm really hoping that like they come back several years from now and they're like, we're this wonderful environmental engineer because of your project. I doubt it, but it's okay.
Yeah. I used to always think when I was teaching computer science or teaching math that they'd all go out to be mathematicians or computer scientists. But it's exposure, and actually I think you touched on when I was going to ask one of the questions that's come in is with regards to the attitude of students. Do you feel like in the number of years you've been teaching, has there been a shift in how students feel about the environment and the passion that they feel towards that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they are really hopeful. Like, I think that there is a concern. I am also the environmental club chairperson, along with a colleague of mine, and we just got picked. It was placed on our plate last year. we were like voluntold to take this over because this is our passion, and it's fine. This is our path for a long way. So this is our second year running the club, and like a lot of the kids from last year, it was a small group because it was our first year. They graduated, or the youngest member got redistricted to a different high school. So we had one student left from the last group, but we just had our first environmental club meeting a few weeks ago. And we had I think we have 50 some kids that are interested, and this is all online. So we can't even meet face to face yet. And they're just interested in some of their ideas of what they want to do. Some of them are former students that have done this project before. So hopefully that helped inspire them to be the stewards of good deeds for our planet. But yeah, they've got amazing ideas, and they just bring me hope, because I think whatever, comes next, I think the earth is in good hands with this next generation coming up, because they've got a lot of really good ideas, a lot of big concerns, and I'm hoping that we can instill with them the continual need to do better, and providing them the tools to help them get to where they want to be.
Oh, that's good to hear, and it's very promising to think of it, because it is going to be there will be challenges for them, but it's good to see that they've got that attitude. We've just looks like just a couple minutes left. I'm going to try and squeeze one more question in if we can on this. I'm always curious. Next project? Do you have a next project?
That's a good question. Actually, seeing that video and seeing my pictures of my classroom was a little bittersweet. Because again, I'm teaching from home. So this is my basement, my kids' Legos in the background. And so it was like a little painful to see my classroom and what kind of things that we used to do, like as of just a few months ago. So I'm trying to really figure out how I can do this virtually, or at least incorporate some sort of engineering design, problem solving, even trying some sort of coding virtually. I'm still wrestling with it. I'm still trying to figure out how to do it effectively. But I am definitely waiting. I can't wait to get back into the classroom, to hear the chatter, to get kids really talking to each other, collaborating with one another, and building and designing and creating, and just seeing themselves light up when they get through a very frustrating problem and get to the other end of it and be like, yeah, I did it. That was my favorite part, just seeing the pride in their face of like, wow, that was really tough, but I made it through. And I mean, it's fun. It's just a lot of, I can't wait. So there's a lot of ideas flowing. Just, I don't know if I can implement them in this environment, which is very frustrating.
It is. I could be, well, my mind started just thinking about, man, it's like Apollo 13. You just have to tell them that you just got what you've got. That's it, folks. You got to solve the problem.
I like that a lot, Kevin. I might have to steal that. I might have to come up with an idea that.
Well, it wasn't my idea to begin with. It was more NASA has credit on that one, I think.
Thanks, Houston.
Yeah, thanks, Houston. In other words, you guys got to fix it yourselves here. What have you got? But I think you're right. That's what I think a lot of teachers are struggling with right now. with the challenge. But I'm glad to hear. I'm looking forward to the chance when there's we get the next conference to get a chance to hopefully your wheels are in motion. We'll get to hear what your next projects are and
Yeah,
the next things you're doing to interact with your students. Um,
absolutely.
I want to say just so I don't get a chance before we end. Thank you so much for sharing. One of the real positive things that I very much appreciate with all our presenters, particularly with this 7 for 7, is people like yourself willing to share, put out your passion out there for others, and to help us to learn from you. So thank you very much for joining us for this evening.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was an honor, a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me to do 7 for 7 and doing this YouTube live. It's just been fun and been an honor, and always fun to hang out with you, Kevin. So I definitely enjoyed it.
All right, good. Yeah, we've had hopefully we'll have some more time to hang out together in person as well. Yeah, and thank you for everyone to joining us for this evening. We'll look forward next week. If you're interested, the next topic is going to be music is math with feelings. So an opportunity as well now to connect math and music together. David Sword is presenting that one. And he's a math consultant and a musicologist. He says here on this, I didn't know that about David. Take us on a tour of his math superstars of music. So join us for that, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.